All right, everybody put on. We hope you got your best Zoom clothes on so that you can be recorded today with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mentor Orientation. This is brought to you by PED and their summer internship program. We are excited to have you here this afternoon. My name is Mike May. I work with a nonprofit out of Albuquerque called Future Focused Education, and my work in particular is creating paid internships for young people. And we do that in Bernalillo County, Albuquerque, and also in Santa Fe, Cuba, Taos, even Cruces. And so I'm excited to be here with you today. We have a great team put together to help you experience hopefully some useful activities on your way to being a mentor, some ideas, some thought-provoking experiences, all in preparation for the summer's intern experience. So the team of folks that are going to be presenting today, I'm joined by Jose Villarreal, Rebecca Cisneros. You'll see that here are the three of us. And then we have a team from PED in the background. Christian Naranjo is managing the Zoom. Jaime Hernandez will be joining us, and Denise Ojeda is likely out there as well. Mark Dusky, I think you probably all know, who's been really facilitating the procedural parts and the funding for this experience this summer on behalf of PED. So we're excited to have you here today. The rest of the team's going to introduce themselves as we move through our experience today. And so at this point, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca Cisneros. She'll introduce herself and get us going today.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Rebecca Cisneros. I am the Youth Engagement Coordinator for the Department of Workforce Solutions. Just a supporting partner with this project. We're very excited. I see that we almost have 50 people on the call today, so thank you. Thank you, everybody who's participating. As mentors, you're going to have a very important role. Just to catch you up, if this is your first time joining us, this is a partnership with Public Education Department, who is providing the funds for hundreds of young people to have a work-based learning opportunity this summer. Some of these young people that are coming into these roles, this will be their first experience in the workforce. So you might have a lot of opportunity to show these young people the way work life is. Some of them have had a job before, so maybe you can just help them improve their employability skills. Either way, you guys are going to be an important touch point for these young people in whatever space you're going to give them. We have our partners, Mike and Jose, who I consider to be some mentor experts. They have a lot of experience working with interns. And so today we're just here to share best practices, tips and tricks to make it a little easier for you guys to move into these roles. We would also be extremely open to hearing some of your experiences. If you've hosted interns before, if you can tell us some of the things that work for you. Let's go to the next slide. We're also going to see, if you're able to, if you can have your camera on as much as possible. It helps us kind of get a range if you like what we're having to say, or if you're falling asleep, and we can make some adjustments. If it happens to interrupt your connectivity, don't worry about it. You can leave it off. Mike did ask for updates on your name tags. It's just easier for us to know who's asking the question and how to appropriately address you. And then the chat box, throw questions into the chat whenever you have any questions. There's plenty of us on here that can help monitor. We'll answer those through the chat that are easy, and then we might hold some for the end if it's going to create a bigger conversation. And then also keep yourself on mute unless you are really interested in us hearing your grocery list or whatever you might have going on in the background. And then we'll do a little bit of an icebreaker just to get us all started. So with this icebreaker, if you guys are joining us again, I will try and throw out some different questions, but I'm going to have you all turn your cameras on. This is called Cameras On. And I like to brag about it every time that I learned this icebreaker working with an intern. So it was a lot of fun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to have you leave your camera on if blank. So if it's not true, if it doesn't apply to you, turn your cameras off, and then we'll turn them back on for the next question. So my first question I'm going to ask is, leave your cameras on if wherever you are throughout the state of New Mexico, it is over 100, or it is 100 degrees or hotter right now. And I actually don't know what the temperature is here, so I'm going to look it up. Oh, I'm at 99, so All right. 102. Oh my goodness. I'm at 99 and I think I'm not built for this. Okay, camera's back on. Leave your cameras on if you have hosted an intern before. Okay, we're gonna have a lot of beginners. I am so happy that you are here. So those of you who have your cameras on, excellent. We hope that you can provide feedback, good or bad, experience that you've had with interns before. And those of you who turned your cameras off because you have not had an intern before, I hope you get a lot out of this training. We're gonna give you some good tips and tricks just to make it a fun experience. Turn your cameras on if you have ever been late to work. This one is a repeat question and it's my favorite. All right, so you've all been late to work, and now leave your cameras on if you blamed traffic, but you were really getting breakfast. Okay, we got some better people on here than me because we're gonna be working with young people. Some of them are gonna be learning that, you know, they gotta plan ahead, they might need to adjust their schedules, get breakfast a little earlier when they come in, but just remember, some of us have done that before too. And now lastly, leave your cameras on if you are excited to host a student intern this summer. Yay. So that was just a fun activity, something that you could also do with your young people when they are coming into orientation, when you meet with them weekly, whatever it might be. It can be something fun that you do in person too, obviously not with cameras, but you could stand up, sit down, touch your toes, whatever it might be. So thanks for playing along, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mike.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. So as Rebecca said, hopefully that just was a perhaps inspirational activity that might be helpful in working with young people. We're anticipating that some of you may be engaged in orientations or even still work that might be hybrid in nature, where sometimes you might find yourself in a Zoom setting, and maybe your intern will as well. So some of those norms and guidelines, as well as just engaging activities, may well be helpful. So we're going to jump right into things today. If you are on the call, first of all, just give yourselves a pat on the back because we're really excited to have you here. You may be a mentor, you may be an intern coordinator, or maybe you are with the county or a tribal government or a Pueblo government, anyone or a partner. So you're all welcome on the call. We just want to clarify that right away. And these trainings have been started, we started them a week ago, they're running this week, and they will run again next week. And so you're also welcome to return if it proves to be helpful, or you just want to get a shot of energy in the arm, because hopefully we'll bring that as well. So again, though, today we will be sharing information primarily from the perspective of a mentor. Just keep that in mind if you are fulfilling other roles in this undertaking. So what our hopes are and goals for today, we'd like to provide you an overview and a structure of the summer internship, keeping in mind that this is going to look different in every community that's doing this in New Mexico. So this is all about local control and local involvement. So the things that we're going to share and the structures and suggestions will likely be customized depending on how your community is approaching this with your partners. We do also want to look at some resources for you as a mentor to help you prep and plan for having a young person at your site. And then lastly, we're going to explore some resources that may well be used with you from an intern coordinator, and that you could then use as well to check in with your intern on the site. We really view both, the whole team really views you as mentors as such an important linchpin in this whole experience, because it's great to have the young people and it's great to have the people supporting them. But if you weren't ready to open up your workspace and share something that you are passionate about with a young person, this whole undertaking would be dead in the water. So we want to thank you again for your involvement in this, and we hope to offer you some things that'll be helpful. So we thought we would start off with this, a little bit of history, and just look at the whole notion of mentorship. And this word itself, in case you're not familiar with it, actually derives from the name of an individual. Mentor, back in Greek times was a friend of Odysseus. And in Greek mythology, he was the individual who cared for Odysseus's son when he headed off to the Trojan War. And so this individual mentor took care of his son. And that name became synonymous with the notion of a counselor or a teacher or an advisor, typically a more experienced person. And in this case, you all have a lot to offer in terms of adjusting a young person's mindset and opening their mind to the world of work, relationships in professional contexts, and building networks, professional networks. So one of the things that's interesting is we want to be clear with you all that this whole notion of a mentor is not about necessarily being a friend in the sense of this is my friend. There are aspects of friendship in mentorship, but there are very clear delineations involving personal and professional boundaries. So we're just excited that you're willing to play this role on behalf of a young person, especially at a time where, as you know, our whole country and the world has struggled with disconnection due to the pandemic. And this is a great opportunity to start moving us in a nice direction this summer as we emerge from a very challenging time. The expectations for mentors, Jose and I thought we would just break this out, give you a quick overview. Again, these are expectations that we think in general, likely would be, you could anticipate seeing. And know again that these will be customized to your particular community. So before the 6-week internship starts, we are imagining that you may well help create a position description for your intern. Some counties and some locales are doing that, others are not, but it certainly is something that's helpful. And on the PED's website, Christian's going to put this link in the chat box for you. You'll hear Jose and I refer to this at different times, but there are resources, templates, examples of position descriptions if you should choose to use that, or if your county or partners are using that. So we think that's a great, it was a recommendation of ours that you consider creating a position description for your intern. Next, we think that you probably should think about creating a general plan for the experience. What is their schedule going to be with you? What are key meeting places that they should be at with you or with members of your team? What experiences do you want? Again, when you start making that plan, which will walk you through some frameworks for how to do that later, you should think about any onboarding steps that might be required. Some of you may work in unique settings that demand a little bit more forethought before a young person is integrated into that. And finally, we think pre-session, we're hoping, and we'll do this today, to familiarize yourselves with some time documentation forms and feedback tools. So again, this is all before the young person shows up in your setting. Once things are underway, we're very hopeful that you will introduce and integrate the intern into your work setting, let other people know what's happening, build a network of support around that young person. We have the expectation that you'll be at least weekly doing one-on-one check-ins with that intern at your site, that you'll be attentive to the intern coordinator. So these are the people that have a cohort of interns and are going to be playing that support function to make sure that good communication and good experiences are happening for their interns. And then finally, again, as I mentioned before, during the session, we're hoping you'll engage and fill out the timesheets, however your county or local government is doing that, as well as the feedback there will be feedback forms for the intern. And that's something that Jose in particular is going to share with you as we move into this presentation. So really that's kind of the nutshell of what we think would be reasonable expectations of you before the session and after, or sorry, during. And now we're going to jump into some activities and examples. Hopefully some of these will be participatory. We'll ask you, much like Rebecca did, to engage with us with your camera, with the chat box, and we'll try to keep it lively. And it's a little bit of learning by doing to emphasize what professional mentorship can look like in the company of caring adults in a professional workplace. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jose Villarreal. And Jose, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rebecca. My name is Jose Villarreal. I am a co-developer and I oversee our work-based learning program in Farmington, New Mexico at Farmington Municipal Schools. Happy to be a part of the New Mexico Public Education Department team. And I'm just going to shift gears right away into the structure of what the intern weekly schedule might look like. So Mike just mentioned the setting up for potential summer internship orientation or kickoff. That would be the first day, for example, for an intern. And then during, we simplified it for, as an example, Mondays, they would be meeting with their intern coordinator, whether it's on Zoom or face-to-face, if the county or tribe or pueblo that is actually acceptable. In addition to that, they will be doing some employability skills and other types of training that actually helps a student or intern get better on the job during the week when they're with you. Tuesday through Friday will be solely on the mentors, and they'll be at the work site anywhere from 16 to 18 hours a week. So it's 20 hours total weekly, and this just gives you a perspective from an intern of what the weekly schedule might look like. Next slide, please. Thank you, Mike. So this is actually an example of a weekly schedule for a mentor. There's a visual on the right. Again, on the left-hand side, we have the attend the internship orientation. Some counties might be doing a 2-day orientation where they're doing some employability skills with the interns before they set them out into the workforce with the mentors, their respective mentors, or maybe it's just a 1-day and then they meet again, like I mentioned on the last slide, weekly with their adult coordinators in a 2 to 4 hour session. Other than that, we expect mentors to definitely get the students hands-on working after an observation period. And that for some might be 2 times a week as a schedule. On the right-hand side, the visual, it's one county is doing it 2 full days a week, and then the intern has 3 days off. Other deliverables by the mentor, if your county and adult coordinator actually utilize the tool we're about to dive into, it's to complete and submit a mentor feedback survey. I will dive into that here in a minute. In addition to that, verify an initial timesheet if or how your county is utilizing that, if they have you actually verify it. This county is definitely having the mentors verify the timesheets, and we'll look at an example of a timesheet here in a minute. Next slide, please. So these are kind of the roles and resources that a structural overview might look like. So again, the intern is the primary agent here. The mentor is a key support in addition to the intern coordinator. They're both supporting them on both ends. However, there's got to be some great relationship and trust and key communication between the intern coordinator and the mentor to provide a quality experience. And that's what we pride our program on, is creating such a quality experience that the intern grows tremendously in this experience. So it's supported by the mentor feedback survey, which is on the bottom of the middle graphic there. It was intentional by the graphic being the mentor kind of filling out that survey on a tablet or a phone. That's kind of an image of a tablet. And the connection from the intern coordinator is magnifying that and digging deeper with the intern on this mentor feedback survey. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here directly on the next slide. So this is a snapshot of the first 3 criteria in that survey that we have provided on as a resource on New Mexico Public Education Department website, which Christian just shared with you. And I'm actually going to take a 2-minute activity and actually have everyone click on the link I'm about to drop in the chat box to go ahead and do a test on what this survey looks like if your intern coordinator is going to use this tool with you. Again, I highly recommend this tool. It is such a valuable key performance indicator in showing the progress of that intern during their experience with you. So 2 minutes, let's do that. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my mic and we'll come back in 2 minutes. This is just a test. Again, it's an example, and then I'll come back in 2 minutes. I've started the timer. Go ahead and click on the link. All right, if you were quick to the punch there and clicked on the link, you're probably looking through it and seeing how easy it is to fill this survey out. Doesn't take too much time. It's very descriptive. Mike, if you don't mind sharing the screen on the same point again, just describing this survey a little more in detail. It's on the sliding scale of 1 to 10, below expectations or exceeding expectations. We ask adult coordinators, or we're asking adult coordinators to communicate to mentors that to be realistic in your first initial feedback for the intern on that first week. We want to see some progress throughout the internship. So again, if they're a 5, give them a 5. Don't be so generous there, because they will improve throughout the rest of the 6-week internship. That said, each criteria is extremely valuable as far as some core skills and also some technical skills that we're looking at seeing how well the intern does. That said, at the bottom, there's an additional comment section. That additional comment section is very valuable for a mentor and an adult coordinator as their as a tool to give additional feedback. Like, for example, we have had mentors give us feedback similar to what an asset this intern is to our team. They are dependable. They show up every day. They're extremely intelligent, so on and so forth on the positive end. And on the other side of it, there's actually accountability there. So for example, if an intern may end up finding some downtime and get on their phone, and it's kind of an awkward scenario for a mentor to address that right away, they can put that in this feedback form and really communicate that to the adult coordinator. So when it's time to check in on the intern, they can talk about that and see what else they can fill that time with in being more productive on the work site. So it's a great tool for communication, but also that performance. In addition, say for example, an intern doesn't call into work and they just don't show up, and that becomes a habit. Well, you can put that in that additional comments there too. So a tremendous tool. And on the other end of the tool, next slide, please, Mike. This is actually what is in the internship packet as a resource on the PED website again. And this right here is the reflection on your scores if you utilize this tool. Students basically receive this worksheet and they fill it out on each criteria: work habits and attitudes, interpersonal effectiveness, technical skills, so on and so forth, on how well they think they did. And they then receive the mentor's real scores back. And it's either a humbling moment, or it hits the score right on the head, or it's a time for coordinator. But also when they come back to work the following beginning of the week, you can actually talk about how they scored and why they scored so well, or how they're doing. A great link between that relationship. Next slide, please. So in addition to, again, the survey, if that's something that your county is utilizing, this is an example of a timesheet / skills grid. This is in the internship packet again on the website. And essentially what this is, what one county is doing is the mentors are initialing off on the daily hours for their respective interns. And also they are utilizing the job skills grid, which is kind of a mini reflection. And there's an example there, but ultimately the interns are going to be learning something new, or maybe routinely picking stuff up and just learning how to implement different sets of skills that they have, or just learning new skills. This is a great place to put that information. And if a student or intern has difficulty understanding what they learned, it's a great another reflection moment for the mentor to really utilize this piece for some growing in this internship. Just to talk just really quickly more on this timesheet, depending on the accounting system at the county that you're partnering with, they might have to modify this, and there might have to be a supervisor that signs off on this as well. Again, this is just an example, and we hope that you utilize this resource. Next slide, please. That's it for me. I'll come up in a minute again. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Jose. So folks, we're gonna transition into some activities that hopefully will just give you some ideas for how you might engage your intern. Also, these are some of these activities that we'll be doing with you are activities that the intern coordinators may well be facilitating with the interns in their orientation and in their training sessions. And again, we know that each community will likely approach this in their own unique way, but some of the folks we're anticipating will do orientation and internship kickoff sessions where mentors and interns may well get to come together before they set foot in your place of work. So one of the things that we would like to do with you for a second is just to ask you, we're going to ask you to do some kind of empathy activities with us, and we'll ask you to kind of put your mind in the space of where a young person might be. And so we'd like to start off and use the chat to do this. So we're going to ask you to use the chat and put in some thoughts. When you think about the world of work from the perspective of a teenager, we want you to go to a negative space, and we want you to imagine what negative associations might a young person have with the world of work. And we're going to have you put those in the chat. So you don't need full sentences, you can just put in a couple words, but I really want to empower you to go to those negative spaces in your heart and mind and think of what a young person would associate in a negative way with the world of work. And we're just going to call some of these out because the chat box is blowing up right now. So I'm seeing boring from Michelle. Melissa says regimented, boring. I can't wear what I want. Getting up on time, not having free time. Less is more. Somebody has named, Ramona said it's overwhelming. The need to be disciplined. Someone has put in, Brian said that an individual may feel like, I don't know how to count money. Or someone else is naming, I may have people telling me what to do. Feeling overwhelmed. Somebody having a supervisor that's on their back all the time. Just flat out thinking, this is stupid, why am I doing this? A lack of social media. Somebody who is not able to then actually access friends as they're used to over the summer, right? Not being off. So these are things, there are so many negative associations. And these could be, right, if I were to ask you as an adult, without putting yourself in the context of a young person, some of these would be similar. One of the activities that we are recommending those intern coordinators actually do is to take a second and name a space that allows the young people to put some of these ideas out on the table, because we feel very strongly in the design of this program that we are going out of our way and the communities are going out of their way to find adults in work settings that care about what they do and are committed to offering professional exposure to these young people in a supportive way. So hopefully a lot of these negative associations that they have, there's some other activities that they'll be doing with them to translate that into a world of work experience that they would like, and to help design it and verbalize with you as a mentor some of the things they'd like to get out of that professional setting and that you can help them with. Some of those will be involving asking them to brainstorm not the negative then, but what is their dream job? And maybe what are some skills that they might need to do that dream job someday? So on the topic of skills, this is just an example of what a position description might look like, right? We try to design, and the templates that are on the website are designed to be accessible to young people. So you all know what position descriptions look like for adults, and often they're tremendously boring and they're helpful, but they're difficult to get through. So we've given templates that allow you to name fairly straightforward essential functions. Perhaps some are virtual, perhaps some are on site, depending on your experience. And the templates also will prompt you to name some of the hard and soft skills that are associated with your particular setting. And these are great things that the intern coordinator can then in turn use in their curriculum that they're offering to that young person, guiding them through the 6 weeks. And they're things you can reference, right, in your actual time with the intern on site. The position description, again, is not required, but we think it's a helpful first step into moving into the direction of making a plan. And this is simply a template that is prompting you to think literally week by week around what type of experiences you want that intern to have. And what we recommend, a frame, kind of a mindset to think about this is, what can you do in terms of creating a blend of real work and exposure for the young person? So again, as a mentor, it would just be a terrible thing if for some reason you were to have a young person come in and do kind of repetitive, for instance, copy or scan things for 6 weeks straight. That would be very unrewarding for the young person. Likely, if you were to go to the other end and just have them follow you around and observe and not do anything active, that would also be a challenge for that young person. So we're trying to shoot for that middle of, maybe there's tasks that you could use some support with. It's okay if some of those are repetitive, but we're also hoping that there's some real meaningful tasks that you can embed in there, and some exposure, right? Taking them to meetings, taking them to experiences, showing them aspects of your work. And this template simply prompts you to think, what will the intern do with you? What will they do on their own? And what might they do with someone else? Again, this is very straightforward, and we're not advocating that you lesson plan every hour as if you were a teacher for this young person, hour by hour, week by week. But if you do take the time to sketch out by week, this is in general what I think I'm going to have this person do, it'll really help you facilitate a more thoughtful experience. And Jose is going to talk to you a little bit about some things that you can do in that process of design that might make a more robust experience.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and you touched on this earlier, but I'll also kind of be repetitive here on the on-the-job sequence for an intern or potential on-the-job sequence. I love the design graphic that that Mike had on the last slide. And if you do something like that, tremendous. If you create like a checklist, for example, of different items that they might be doing or can potentially do that are high level expectations. I recommend you set these expectations really high for all students that come in or interns that come into the work site, because they're very talented. But the 1, 2, 3 here on this slide, again, the onboard training, that's likely going to happen from the get-go at that intern orientation. Students will get safety training, they'll get other types of training from HR, and then they will turn into basically coming into the work site. And there might be an observation period. Again, I'm kind of repeating what Mike said, where they're observing not only what you do, but you observing them and giving them some small tasks in order to see if they're capable or able to perform those tasks. And then the hands-on comes. Once they get comfortable in, maybe they shadow different divisions or different operations within your division to learn how the whole operation works, and then they get comfortable with doing certain tasks, that's when you can assign them certain things for the remainder of the internship, if you will. Maybe this happens the last 4 weeks of the internship, but we definitely want these students to get hands-on, high quality experiences. So whatever that looks like in your department, whatever is in line with safety and, you know, all of the Fair Labor Standard Act hazard on the job things that they can get into as a 16 and 17-year-old, please offer that experience for them, because they need to learn hands-on what it is that you do. That said, the do's and don'ts on the bottom here are, we empower and encourage students in education, and we also empower them in the workforce. And we ask that you do the same. Just ask them to get better. Try to give them some problem-solving activities that they can get better at. What we do not, which Mike mentioned about copying, making copies, what you see in the movies, you know, as an intern does, just makes copies and relieves the job of you of the menial tasks. We ask that you kind of obviously can do that, but not stick to that the whole time. We want a high-level opportunity, a high-level quality experience in this, and that's what we're asking. We're not prescribing that, but this is kind of a 1, 2, 3 step, if you will, in order to get there.
Great. So we also, you know, that the process of thinking this through also sets you up to create clear and consistent communication with your young person. And so that really begins in that onboarding process and the orientation. We just feel like that we want to be clear to emphasize that in a 6-week period, things will move quickly, and good communication and proactive communication will be really important for you. In particular, just being clear with the young person, how should they best connect with you? Make sure they have your number. Make sure that the intern coordinator has your number or email, and you can tell them, hey, I appreciate a text, or text and then call. But just whatever the approach is, both on site, how they can get a hold of you, and then when things are off site, if they need to get connected, what are the steps that that young person and intern coordinator should take? So one aspect of communication with interns is what we mentioned earlier, this one-on-one check-in. And we just feel like making dedicated time for that young person with you, and maybe it's 1 or 2 other people in your team, depending on how the experience is designed, this is just really valuable. It allows you to kind of frame a safe, supportive context. It can reinforce, you can reinforce with your messaging and your listening, the skill building that they're doing. And that in our hope is, and Jose and I recognize that this is going to look different in different spaces, but that curriculum that the coordinator is facilitating, hopefully you will be a little bit of aware, and you could even ask the young person, what did you cover in class, so to speak, this week, so that you can link or make observations about some of the things you're doing with some of the things they're learning in their cohort group. So making time to do this, we think, is really important. And in the slide deck, which will be available to you after this experience today, Christian will post this, I think, next week. This is simply a kind of a basic matrix that suggests if you need some guidance in thinking how to do a one-on-one meeting, here's a way you could approach it, right? 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then there's another 5 to 10. So literally 15 to 20 minutes, and you could do this once at the start of the week, depending on what the schedule is, maybe at the end, or as often as you'd like. So the idea of starting something off in a way that puts the intern at ease, there's some prompts here that frame a bigger picture conversation, and asking them kind of straight up questions. Tell me what it's like to fit into this space. How do you feel like that's going? Tell me what it's like to be a student. Ask them areas that they're experts about. Maybe they attend a unique kind of school. Ask more about those types of experiences. What do they do in their free time? Just to open and sort of create that space of sharing. And then asking them to talk about how the work has been at the setting. And if you have observations that you can share, this is a great place to put that in. And then ask them like, hey, how was that? What was challenging about it? And young people, when they feel safe, they have a wonderful ability to be really honest. And we always find that very engaging. And then there's a great time in this space to give them feedback. Being able to name some of the things that you see them trying to do, maybe even struggling with, but validating their effort is a great opportunity. And giving them some constructive feedback. And we're going to step in and let you look at some resources right now that will give you some vocabulary if you feel like you need that as you engage with young people. So taking the time to have that one-to-one conversation is that is half the battle. And then when you're in it, what this list is simply a list of words, right, that fall under some of the skills that we in the curriculum area are hoping that these coordinators will touch on with them and engage. So you can see this long list of adjectives primarily, some adverbs in here, things that help frame and describe the behavior of a young person in different areas of and skills. So maybe you've seen them being an active listener, and you can call that out. Maybe you can see them making eye contact with you, and that's appropriate in these settings. Maybe they're also being prompt, right? They're showing up on time, they're prepared. These are all things that if you are able to name them and call them to the young person's attention, you're validating their effort in this experience. So again, we don't think you need to memorize this list, but we wanted to call attention to words that are helpful in creating an environment of active recognition. So recognizing a young person's efforts and abilities and successes in the moment that they are doing something. And these are examples, right? These may seem a little stilted, like, hey, I noticed that you asked for clarity after a meeting because you were unclear what was happening. I appreciate you trying to understand our work better. I hear you using industry terminology. It shows me, right? You're really naming for them their efforts and what you're observing. And this is something that we have worked in many of our internships with an organization called Nurtured Heart. You may have heard them, but this is an organization that's all about how to give proactive and active recognition. This is kind of an interesting twist on this slide. This is actually naming success in what you don't see. So imagine young people and anybody who's new to a job, there are going to be times when they're faced with choices or they're placed in situations where things could go less than ideally. And you may notice that, right? For a young person who, let's say you get a text early in the morning and the person's like, oh, something's wrong with my car, I can't make it. And yet they stick with it and figure out and problem solve and show up, maybe a little bit late, maybe they actually make it on time. You could name this reality of you could have been late today because your car wouldn't start, but instead you showed resourcefulness and you reached out to me, you reached out to your coordinator, we were able to get you a ride and you showed up here on time, or you showed up for this meeting. So again, it's this validation of an experience that could have gone south in a direction that would not be helpful, and yet the intern made choices to overcome. And sometimes even just simply anticipating like, ooh, this could be tricky, and naming that early can be very helpful for a young person. So however you do this, we think all of this will help with relationship building and creating a meaningful space for you and for that young person to connect. Ultimately, they are going to show up on site. There's going to be a first day. Jose and I were thinking through, there's going to be onboarding that you'll do with the county team or the tribal team or the Pueblo team, whatever that is. There's still going to be that process of having a young person show up and navigate those first hours, and for you as well as a mentor. And so this is an activity that we are suggesting that the intern coordinators and the program administrators consider doing with the interns. We'd like to do it with you now using the chat from the perspective of a mentor, which we're assuming most of you on this call are. So the intern would be asked on your first day of the internship, what are you going to be thinking, seeing, saying, doing? It's really asking them to step into that and vision, right? Imagine that first day. And then they deconstruct that a little bit. Today, we'd like you to use the chat box, and we want you to do the same thing through the eyes of a mentor. You're going to be welcoming this young person. What are you going to be doing on that first day? And there's several different categories here. Feel free to use whatever one speaks to you, but I'd certainly recommend the things that you might be thinking and feeling, maybe saying and doing, if you want to start with those. So we're going to step into the chat tool again, and we just ask you to think creatively, imagine that first day, what's going to be going through your mind as the adult mentor, and we'll see what we've got in the chat. Rebecca started us off strong, that thinking, I hope this intern finds me helpful. Melissa, thank you so much. I would like to make sure where they know where the bathroom is. That's so great. And then like rules that you're going to be thinking, I need to tell them about rules, even something like a water bottle. Melissa is saying, I want to be sure that they know they're welcome. I'm going to try to put them at ease, says Alyssa from Curry County. Orientation to the key areas of the workspace is going to be on your mind. Welcoming them, touring again. Thank you, Ms. Flores. Adriana says they're going to be, she's going to be thinking in her mind, what do they want to learn, right? That's a great posture to have. Like, what is this young person going to be interested in? And to be honest, they may not even know yet. If they have a position description in advance and they've been prepped, they may have some ideas, but you may have to help them tease out over that first week what they might want to learn. Showing off my Legos. Awesome. Yeah, Brian, if you can de-escalate that early tension by sharing Legos, I think that's a great idea. Introducing them, giving them an onboarding packet and getting them comfortable in the setting. Taking care of the basics. Diamond's thinking, how can I make an empowering first impression? That's so great. And then understanding what's expected of that young person, so you can translate that for them. And then name tags. Oh, that's such a great idea. That is so challenging. And all of us on this call, I mean, there's 50 of us. If we were to break it down, there's a group of us that can manage names well, and there's a lot of us who can't. And so having those supports is a great thing to do, especially in those early days. And then a rewarding experience, right? This making it known that you are there for them and you're committed to facilitating something that's going to be meaningful to them. So again, this is an activity that we're imagining the interns will have done in some form. When the young people show up to your site, regardless of what has happened prior, hopefully you're aware of that and maybe you even participated in it. But these are some things we want to make sure that you as the mentor, knowing your site and your particular organization or company or nonprofit, whatever it is, be sure you talk about what the COVID safe practices are for your space. The world is changing rapidly and guidelines are shifting, but nevertheless, be very explicit. Take the time also to talk with them about how they should look in your space, right? What is the general dress guideline that you need to share with them? It totally pays to be upfront with the young person. And if a young person, if you catch for some reason early that they're having issues with meeting those guidelines for appearance, that's where that intern coordinator should be contacted right away so that they can support helping that young person obtain what they need to be in your space. and look professional. Again, private versus public. These are things that for many professionals, it kind of goes without saying, but remember for some of these young folks, it may be their first time in a setting, a professional setting. So reminding them, here's what the guidelines are for phone use. Here's what the guidelines are for taking pictures. There may be some confidentiality topics that you want to make very clear. In general, we suggest that you just tell them, remember that this is a professional setting. What happens here stays here. It's not the fodder for social media. It's not the fodder for sharing with friends, other than maybe some experiences that you can help them understand that these are things you could share that you had a good learning experience with, or something that was challenging. But guiding them for how to talk about what their experiences are is a really helpful component to this. Again, Jose reviewed very thoroughly the time card and the mentor feedback forms. Those will look likely different and may be implemented virtually, right, digitally or in paper in your area, but just be ready to review that with the young person so they understand what their obligations are with that. And then finally, we really think that it's wise if you talk explicitly with that young person about what to do if you are out of the office. And in some cases, we've seen folks who identify a mentor buddy that's like a backup for you. It could be another ally for that individual, but certainly if you're not able to be on site, that's helpful. And this slide is super straightforward, right? But we just want you to really understand that there are resources to support you, and we really want to encourage you to engage them if you find yourself with questions. And again, reaching out early is the name of the game with this. So whether you need to contact your intern coordinator or your county or tribal or Pueblo governments, we really want to encourage you to do that in order to really engage support that you need, because you are the intersection where the rubber hits the road in this experience, and you're going to have your eyes on that intern and in the setting much more so than the coordinator, right? They're at a distance, and so are the other county folks. So you feeling confident to reach out to people is really going to be critical. So Jose, this is the bulk of the information we wanted to share. At this point, Jose and I have a survey that we'd like to ask you to complete. This survey may well prompt some other thinking and questions. And so we're going to have you do that now, and we're going to take about 5 minutes. I'm going to paste the survey into the chat. And then after that, we'll open up the floor to questions. So we kind of think the survey will serve as a prompt for questions as well, and you'll have some quiet time just to think. We've hit you with a lot of information. We want you to be able to digest that, and then you can come back and we'll start to engage with questions, and maybe you even want to share some things that you're anticipating doing with your intern. So the survey is in the chat. I'll put a stopwatch on for 5, and then we'll check in and see if folks need a little more time. You are welcome as you complete that to start putting in questions in the chat as well, and we'll queue those up and start going through them. Yeah, right at the start, my apologies to the folks in Doña Ana. We messed up that there's a typo on that county's name. So my apologies. Yes, DOA, and I think Ana is representative of Doña Ana. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could just use the reaction function to put a hand or a heart or whatever up if you would like a little more time on the survey. We'd appreciate that. And that way we can wait a second if we need to before we start going into questions. So I'm going to try to scan the screen. Okay, we've got a couple folks that would like a little more time. So we're going to give that another minute or two to finish the survey. Okay, so I'm taking a look in the chat to see if there's any additional questions for our team. You are also welcome just to unmute yourselves and ask a question that might be on your mind. Do keep in mind, we'll do our best to answer, but Jose, myself, and the PED team, we may not know the specifics of how certain things are being implemented in your area. And if that's the case, you're welcome to ask something and we'll do our best, but we may actually refer you to someone who we know is working to design the program in your area. So any questions that people have, the floor is open. Don't worry, we're ready. If you don't have questions, it's all good, folks. We appreciate the supportive comments in the chat. We're glad this was helpful in some way to you. And again, we will be holding these trainings again next week. You are more than welcome to rejoin. It'll certainly look a little familiar, but we will use the information in the surveys to make slight adjustments to what we share. So thanks for taking the time to do that. So Brian is asking a question. Brian from San Juan County is asking, do interns choose where they want to go or are they assigned? That's a great question, Brian. And I can just speak from the counties that I know and I've been working with, and Jose can chime in. The ones that I am working with have designed the application such that the intern is prompted to kind of give like some areas of interest, or there's some potential interest areas listed and they rank what their top 3 are. And then in the matching process, they try to take that into account based on the sites they've been able to obtain. So that's what I'm aware of. In some spaces, folks are trying to do that. Jose, what's happening up in the Farmington area?
That's right, and it looks like Brian is from San Juan County. So yes, that's exactly what they did. They did that. They basically asked some subset questions on the application, and it was career interest and also kind of location, because we're partnering with others in Farmington to try and place students best fit. We wish we had an interview process, but and some counties are doing the interviews, which is really cool. But yeah, ultimately they're assigned.
Great. Anything else from anybody? Otherwise, we want to respect your time. We really appreciate you taking a portion of your day to join us. And we're happy to have folks start signing off. Have a great rest of the afternoon. And Christian has put in the link again for resources to the summer internship program. You are welcome to peruse all of those and use whatever you might find helpful. So thanks again from the whole team and PED, and have a great experience with your interns this summer.